Hi everybody, good morning, happy Tuesday. The first thing that we're gonna do in this lesson is go through our homework assignment. So we should have completed Unit 7 Assignment 6, which was a worksheet, and you should have uploaded a picture of the front and the back of your worksheet, or if you did it on a separate sheet of paper, that's fine too, to Google Classroom. So I'm going to post a PDF of this key as well, so you could take your time to look at the answers. There are a couple things though I just want to go over with you quickly at the start of the video here. So what we're trying to do for all of these proofs is prove a pair of triangles congruent, and then directly after that step use CPCTC to prove a pair of corresponding sides or angles congruent. So I first want us to take a look at number 2. So I went through the steps of proving the triangles congruent. I proved them congruent using side angle side. So directly after I've proved the triangles congruent for step 5, I've written here for the reason CPCTC. And again, that goes directly in line with a statement saying angles or sides are congruent, not that segments are parallel. So that's why this has to be a 6-step proof. That's why this step is not in line with CPCTC. So in order to say that I have AP parallel to BQ, these segments in purple are the segments that I want to prove parallel. I need to find a transversal that connects them. So you have actually 2 options here for step number 5. So I happen to choose this diagonal transversal, but you also could have chosen this transversal. So I chose this purple one diagonal from P to Q. So I know that angle P has to be congruent to angle Q because of CPCTC, which is the reason I can now say that these segments are parallel. Because if these angles are congruent, they're in the corners of the Z or the N shape, and by the converse of alternate interior angles theorem, these segments would have to be parallel. You could have also though said, and it would be correct as well, for step 5, you could have said angle A is congruent to angle B. Also, if you don't want to name the theorem here, you could say alternate interior angles congruent, the little arrow, and then a parallel symbol. For proof number 3, I marked up the given information in the diagram. This diagram is a little bit more complex because there are multiple triangles in the diagram. So once I marked up the given info that I had a pair of sides and angles congruent, I knew that the triangles I want to prove congruent have to contain this full side and this full angle. So it's like this large triangle, I highlighted that in an orange color, and this purple triangle here that I want to prove congruent. And the 2 triangles overlap or share side AB. So that's how I knew that had to be step 2. Then I proved the triangle is congruent by side angle side. If you can't see that it's side angle side from this given diagram, that's when I suggest redrawing the triangles with the same markings. So then you can easily or more easily see, because it's less cluttered, that you have 2 sides and the included angle to prove them congruent. So again, after we prove triangles congruent, we always use CPCTC to prove a pair of angles or sides congruent. But the reason why we can't say for step 4, AE is congruent to BE is because AE and BE are not full corresponding sides in the triangles we just proved to be congruent. They're parts of sides. So in order to get to these 2 segments or sides are congruent, I have to say that these 2 smaller angles here are congruent, because those do fall in the 2 triangles I just proved congruent. And then that's going to show us that in the middle here, triangle AEB is an isosceles triangle. So if we have those base angles congruent, then the sides have to be congruent. Or you could have used for step 5, you could have said the converse of base angles theorem. if we flip to the back again, I used that same technique of highlighting the triangles. You could have actually, for this, proven these two little sets of triangles congruent because you have a pair of vertical angles here. Use CPCTC to say that you have a pair of sides congruent, and then you have an isosceles triangle to say the base angles were congruent. That was another valid way you could have done this proof. It was a little bit longer, so I went a more direct route here. And then the last two proofs, I had given you information about a pair of triangles congruent, and I wanted you to prove a second pair of triangles congruent. So the way I went through problems like this in the notes yesterday was I highlighted the pair of triangles that I was given to be congruent. So I knew that DCE was congruent to BAF, and I want to prove that DCA is congruent to BAC. So I want to prove like these really large orange triangles congruent. So what I first wrote down, because I had a pair of triangles given to me to be congruent, I want to use CPCTC. I want to be strategic about what pairs of sides and angles I'm going to say are going to be congruent to one another. And how I figured out that I should be putting DC as congruent to BA and angle 2 is congruent to angle 1 is I looked at these triangles. I looked at what do each of the purple triangles and orange triangles completely share or have in common. They overlap on top of segment DC and AB. I know that those are corresponding because of the order of the given, the order of the letters of the given congruent statement, as well as angles 1 and 2. So if I'm looking at the orange triangles, I have a side and an angle now congruent, and I know that the orange triangles overlap on top of segment AC. So I said AC is congruent to itself by the reflexive property. Then the new set of triangles I want to prove are congruent because of side angle side. And number 6 was a little bit more difficult. We knew that triangle EAB and DCB were congruent, these two small triangles on the sides of the diagram. So again, I said CPCTC for step 2, and I pulled out some specific information. So I looked at the small triangle and then the large triangle and tried to pinpoint what overlaps. So EA is a side that overlaps, this angle A is a side that overlaps in the small triangle and the large one. And I saw that I had an angle and a side congruent. These two larger triangles that I want to prove congruent also share a side ED down here. But then if we used that, this would be side angle, which again is not a congruence shortcut. It is not something we should be writing on our paper, especially if we put the A in front in this acronym. So side angle is not a congruent shortcut. So I additionally said under this step for CPCTC that EB is congruent to DB. EB congruent to DB. And what that allowed me to do was say that then I have these two base angles congruent, because this large triangle down here at the bottom would then be isosceles. So I said then if the sides are congruent, then the base angles have to be congruent. And then in triangle EAD, I had the angle, the side, and this other angle. So I had two angles and a non-included side, no matter which one you'd be looking at there. So angle, side is how I prove those triangles congruent. So those are a couple comments I wanted to make about the homework. Again, I'm going to be posting a PDF of this so you can kind of look at your answers for however long you want to. And I would like for you to send me any questions that you have, whether it be in a comment directly on this post or if it is in an email sent to me. For today, we're not going to go through a new lesson, but what I would like for you to do is begin working on your Unit 7 review sheet. I did give you, as long as you were in class, the Unit 7 review sheet before the school shut down. But I have posted a PDF of it, attached it to this post as well in case you don't have it with you. Because the review packet is a little bit longer, it's 20 questions and it has a bunch of proofs in it, I am going to give you 2 days to complete it. So today's Tuesday. I do want you to send me pictures, upload those pictures to an assignment I will be posting of the review packet being complete. But because it's a little bit longer, I am going to give you a little bit more time to complete that. And then on Thursday, after it's due, I'm going to post the key. And again, ask you to check your work and see if we have any questions. And then on Friday, we will be taking a short quiz assessment on Unit 7, which again will be online. This is why we should be taking accurate notes. Also, it will be on Google Forms and Google Docs. So I'll give you some more information on that in the coming days.